It doesn't matter how big and strong you are, if you get injured, you're going to be left vulnerable. This is something that gym goers know all too well if they've ever been forced to take a week off of their training or more. That's why recovery and the body's ability to repair itself after an injury or illness are among the most important aspects of our biology when it comes to maximising performance. And also just not feeling like shit. Our bodies are constantly being degraded over time, but when everything's working properly, that only creates the opportunity for them to come back better and more resilient than before. As Nietzsche would put it, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So how can you support this vital process and ensure that you're coming back stronger? How can you rejuvenate and restore your body quickly and efficiently in order to be able to perform your very best every day? How can you develop Wolverine or Deadpool-like healing so that nothing can keep you down for long? I did some seriously deep research into this one, but please keep in mind that I am not a doctor. This is just some cool stuff that I found. It's up to you to do more research. So let's dive in and see what options there are.
What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Stand a little taller.
If you want to understand how to aid our bodies in healing us, then it would first help to understand how that process works currently. When we injure ourselves then, the body responds with a wound healing cascade. This has 4 stages: clot formation, inflammation, proliferation, and maturation. The clot formation stage is intended to stop bleeding and also prevent infection from bacteria, viruses, or fungi. Interestingly, the fight or flight response, which is triggered immediately following an injury and often just before, will actually help to increase the viscosity of the blood and contract blood vessels to aid with the formation of clots as necessary. A clot, also known as a thrombus, is formed by blood coagulation and is made from platelets and red blood cells to form a plug, along with a mesh of fibrin protein. This clotting is then followed by a neutrophil invasion within minutes following a trauma, and which lasts for 24 to 48 hours. These are white blood cells created in the bone marrow, which of course have the job of preventing and reversing infections. Neutrophils also cause damage to the host tissue, however, and this is thought to be one of the reasons that they're short-lived in duration. Inflammation continues beyond this point, however, with the role of infection fighting being overtaken by longer-lasting macrophages and other agents. These cells are what trigger the release of growth hormone, encouraging fibroblasts to travel to the area along with epithelial and endothelial cells to begin forming new capillaries and support enhanced blood flow. Next is proliferation. During this stage, an immature granulation tissue is born, consisting of new connective tissue and microscopic blood vessels. This appears on top of the skin produced by the fibroblasts. This tissue forms starting at the edges of the injury and then travels inwards towards the centre and begins to form large amounts of type 3 collagen. Its creation is dependent on the fibroblasts receiving a sufficient amount of oxygen and nutrients via the blood vessels. Meanwhile, cells necessary for regeneration and capillary growth will divide and copy themselves via mitosis. As this tissue matures during the maturation phase, the fibroblasts will slow their production of collagen, become more spindly in appearance, and produce the stronger type 1 collagen rather than the weaker but easier to produce type 3. Finally, any new blood vessels that are no longer needed will be removed via apoptosis, cell death. This process can take an entire year in some cases. Okay, so that's an awful lot of information, but don't worry if you didn't take it all in. It's just to provide a bit of background for what we're going to look at next. So what can we take from all this? The first thing is that inflammation itself is not a bad thing. In fact, it's now widely thought that using NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, to reduce the pain of DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness, the muscle pain felt after an intense workout, might actually impair hypertrophy. This makes a lot of sense when you consider that the inflammation leads to the production of growth hormone and IGF-1 and other useful anabolic hormones. Likewise, icing inflammation on wounds might inhibit their recovery. That might sound pretty counterintuitive, and it goes against much of what we've been taught, but there's a lot of evidence to suggest that this might be the case. Icing not only slows down the recovery of wounds, but it also actually limits the extent of the eventual recovery. There are some findings that show contradictory results, but keep in mind that reaching for the ice pack might not be the first best move. Elevating the limb is considered okay, and so is using compression. The aim instead is to encourage blood flow to the affected area, and there are numerous ways we can do this that we'll be getting into later. Now you might be wondering about contrast therapy. This is the very trendy process of subjecting a recovering athlete to both hot and cold in an alternating fashion. The idea is that the hot water will cause vasodilation, widening the blood vessels to allow more blood to flow to the affected area, while the cold water will increase vasoconstriction, narrowing the blood vessels. At the same time, this will also cause the lymph vessels to expand and contract, helping to pump stagnant fluid away from the area. This is potentially beneficial, seeing as the lymph system doesn't have a pump mechanism of its own. That said, there's also the possibility that this treatment might inadvertently reduce the good type of inflammation as well, and so more research is needed before you can definitely put this in the win column. So about improving blood flow, one way we can do this is through supplementation. In particular, it turns out that the once popular pre-workout supplement L-arginine might actually be highly beneficial for helping with healing. L-arginine is a vasodilator as well, meaning it opens up the blood vessels to enhance blood flow to the wound area. By raising nitric oxide, it might also be able to increase the number of satellite cells that can be used during hypertrophy and other forms of tissue repair. But any vasodilator, such as epicatechin, will also have these benefits. So more interesting is the fact that it also seems to be able to increase the amount of collagen that collects around the wound. This is effective both for cutaneous wounds and fractures. For all these reasons, it seems that arginine supplementation might be particularly useful for recovery from numerous types of injury. Arginine supplementation is most effective when taken at 2% of energy and only when energy and protein requirements are met. It should go without saying that protein and carbs in general are beneficial for healing. L-Citrulline might actually be more effective in wound healing just as it is as a pre-workout. Due to it being a precursor to arginine, there's actually significantly more bioavailable. It'll be absorbed and used better by the body. The use of amino acids and other nutrients in this way to enhance recovery falls under the heading of immunonutrition. This is a somewhat controversial though very interesting field, with other popular supplements being vitamin C, which plays an important role in the production of collagen, and omega-3 fatty acid. In one study it was found that the mice given vitamin C showed improved wound contraction time, improved collagen deposition, and increased fibroblast numbers. Another study showed that vitamin C supplementation could aid to the healing of pressure sores in human participants. The role of omega-3 fatty acid, on the other hand, is one that's still interestingly up for debate. Omega-3 is pretty much my favourite all-round nutrient. Everyone has a favourite nutrient, right? Omega-3 is particularly lauded for its ability to lower chronic inflammation. It does this by reducing the production of pro-inflammatory cytokines. While lowering inflammation might be beneficial in normal waking life, it could actually have a detrimental effect, of course, during wound healing, seeing as we now know the importance of that response. Indeed, this is corroborated by a number of studies, but with that said, other studies suggest that omega-3 might be useful in shortening recovery times and lowering risk of infection. In particular, combining arginine supplements with omega-3 appears to be beneficial to wound healing across multiple studies. It's possible that omega-3 is beneficial to some aspects of wound healing, epithelialization for instance, but detrimental to others such as collagen deposition. One option then is to take a combination of omega-3 and arginine together for the first couple of days following injury, and then to reduce omega-3 intake for the latter period. It may also be that omega-3 somehow makes the healing process more efficient, thereby reducing swelling for the right reasons. However, more research needs to be carried out before official directions can be ascertained. Other nutrients that have been demonstrated to support healing include vitamin A, zinc, vitamin K, antioxidants, amino acids. Boron might be useful in bone repair, and anything that raises testosterone and growth hormone will help to place you in a more anabolic state for enhanced tissue recovery. So with all that in mind, you might conceivably be able to conjure up a kind of healing stack if you're trying to recover from an injury. You also now know not to necessarily reach for the ice pack right away. But what else might help? Well, one other important factor is likely to be sleep. While some studies have failed to demonstrate a vital role for sleep in healing, more recent findings have called that into doubt. It also stands to reason that sleep would help with healing. After all, sleep is the most anabolic state, during which time we see huge spikes in growth hormone. During sleep, we also see an increase in cell division, and in another recent study, it appeared that sleep was actually more important than nutrition for recovery. In particular, it seems that deep sleep, stages 3 and 4, are especially instrumental in the recovery of wounds. So anything you can do to boost the quality of your sleep and to get more of it will also encourage better healing. General rest and avoidance of psychological stress is also probably a good idea. Psychological stress increases the production of cortisol and other stress hormones, which can blunt the repair processes. For instance, if you were to injure yourself whilst preparing for a stressful exam, you'd likely find that the wound was slower to heal than it otherwise might be. Countless studies show a link between self-reported stress and delayed healing, and this is also true for muscle repair. Stress, it appears, can actually impair the initial inflammatory response and reduce the production of cytokines, which presumably is an evolutionary mechanism intended to allow us to escape a dangerous situation before inflammation limits movement. The role of stress then is to plug your wound and provide you with enough energy to get out of danger. It's only once safe then that the body will enter into a more relaxed state and will begin to focus more on recovery. Resting is also a good idea for a whole host of different reasons when it comes to recovery. Apart from anything else, it will prevent re-injury and the formation of compensatory movement patterns. It's why I now take a whole week off of training once every month or so. I made a whole video recently on the importance of recovery and training, so be sure to check that out. Hopefully you now have a fairly good idea of how to support your body's natural healing processes and perhaps some things to avoid. But if you really want Wolverine-esque healing, then you're going to need some real transhuman technology to take your body to the next level. And this is coming. For instance, we know the importance of extracellular matrix and might consider using a more potent exogenous form of this component. This is exactly what some scientists have been doing, using the extracellular matrix derived from some highly regenerative pig bladders in order to help heal a wide range of severe wounds. These pig guts provide the scaffolding necessary for tissue repair and were rare in the fact that they were able to retain their basement membrane once removed.
In 2005, a 72-year-old man accidentally cut off his fingertip. A few weeks later, after sprinkling a mysterious powder on it sent to him by his brother, his finger grew back, just the way it was before.
In the near future, we might also be able to look forward to things like BPC-157. This is a peptide containing 15 amino acids that's derived from human gastric juices. It was originally synthesized to help treat inflammatory bowel syndrome and gastric ulcers, but it has since been shown to be useful in regenerating bones, muscles, ligaments, and more. BPC-157 appears to help in increasing angiogenesis, the formation of new blood vessels. It also appears to promote growth hormone production. Currently, it's not thought to have any side effects, but while the substance is already being used by some risk-taking bodybuilders, keep in mind that most studies so far have used rats, and that it's still undergoing human trials. Not only that, but it will involve right now purchasing a drug from an unregulated online source and then injecting it into yourself, which is always inherently risky. Do your own research, proceed with caution and at your own risk. Don't come crying to me if you turn into the lizard. This is actually one of several such miracle peptides. Another one is TB500, which this time is a synthetic version of TB4, thymosin beta-4, which is naturally produced in the thymus gland. It's able to upregulate such cell-building proteins as actin, which aids with cell multiplication and migration along with wound sealing. In the future and with more studies, these drugs may be available over the counter or on prescription. More exciting still are the future transhuman techniques that could one day lead to limb regeneration. This approach currently focuses on a number of specific genes, including LIN28. LIN28 is a gene that's active in the womb but dormant during adulthood in most mammals. When the gene is turned back on in mice, they develop the ability to heal puncture wounds in record time and even grow lost toes, though it did also cause the mice to grow unusually large and hairy. The gene appears to work by regulating the self-renewal of stem cells and accelerating the metabolic rate. Drugs might also be able to mimic these effects without the need for gene modification in future. Likewise, when the gene P21 is turned off, it appears to enable appendage regeneration in mice and healing without scarring. And of course, there are countless other fascinating areas being looked into right now, including the WNT signaling pathway used in fracture repair and embryonic development, stem cell treatments, and more. What's interesting about all this is that it appears that humans actually already have the dormant ability to regenerate limbs and heal wounds more quickly, and many of them use the same pathways that are responsible for growth and repair in the womb. The question you might ask at this point then is, why does it turn off? The answer may simply be that in the wild, the sheer amount of energy required to regenerate a limb wouldn't be worth the ultimate gain. That is to say that attempting to regrow a limb might have been a death sentence for prehistoric man, whereas living with just one arm wouldn't be the end of the world. Thus, natural selection saw that we lost the ability. Today we live in much safer and more plentiful times, and so it's likely only a matter of time until new treatments become available, or until future transhumans are granted the ability to permanently regenerate lost limbs, creating real-life Deadpools. And then we can all be a whole lot more reckless, which is a good thing. So there you go guys, that's a ton of information on healing for you to get stuck into. I hope you found some of it useful and interesting, and let me know in the comments down below what I've missed. There's tons more on this subject to talk about, and I'm definitely going to be covering it more in future videos. I'll also be looking into lots of other areas of recovery and healing, such as self-myofascial release, how to enhance sleep, cryotherapy, and more. So if that sounds good, then please subscribe, and I'll also be covering lots more of the usual stuff soon on fitness, training, bodybuilding, productivity, working online. I've got my home Batcave video coming along soon, so if that all sounds good, then thanks a ton for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Optimus. I've done it! Optimus Prime lives! It's true. Our leader is back.
Yes, Skylynx. And this time, no force in the universe can stop me.